Welcome to I Am the End of the Words. I'm still proud of that title. I mean, there's a lot of things you need to know, I guess, to get it. And by a lot of things, I mean one song by one band and one lyric from said song. So I guess you need to know one thing. Today we have the 2002 The Bobby Gold Stories by the one, the only Anthony Bourdain, maniac of a man. If you've watched No Reservations, if you've watched The Layover or Parts Unknown, I'm sure there's one I'm missing. I've watched all of them. And this is the first book by Anthony Bourdain I've ever read. First thing is this hardback I have here. I think it's the first U.S. edition. I guess it was printed in the UK prior to this. It has a bit of a decal cut on the paper, meaning the paper is a little feathered here, just a tiny bit. It also has its own little ribbon bookmark, which I don't know if I hate it. In this kind of a book, I don't think it's necessary. For me, though, it's like, oh, Anthony Bourdain, he's a pretentious asshole. I get it. Well, I mean, I guess he deserves to be pretentious from what he's come through. And if you don't know his story, don't worry about what I'm talking about. But the Bobby Gold Stories, the main problem I had with this is I think this may be a case of if I didn't know Anthony Bourdain, it'd be a lot better. If I didn't know his voice and I didn't have his voice in my head, it'd be a lot better. Because him reading this to me, I read it differently than I would with my voice on my head. It was actually hard for my voice to break through reading this. And every chapter, I mean, I guess it is called the Bobby Gold Stories, and there is one cohesive storyline running through the whole thing. But I think that it was almost like there were different stories. I mean, at least the first 4 or 5 were just like, okay, where are we going with this? And I mean, I guess you had to establish the character. We had to figure out who Bobby Gold was. We had to figure out what he did, what his history is. But it was just a case of, I felt like it was overwritten at times. I feel like the way he describes the scene, it didn't do it for me. Pretty much, he'd open up every scene with telling you, who it is and what they're wearing. Let me just find a quick. Here we go. Actually, that's the first sentence. That's the first one. Bobby Gold in a black Speedo, his hair still wet from the surf, took a long sip of beer and looked at the pigeons. It's a little overwritten for me. If the whole book would have been like that, I'd have been fine with it. But it's almost like it's overwritten at the start of a chapter, and then it's just written. All in all, though, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It's not going to deter me from reading other Anthony Bourdain books. It's also not going to make me go buy any immediately. But I did like how it's Anthony Bourdain. I expected him to work in food at some point. The story is of Bobby Gold, who is basically a bone breaker, if you will, for this low-end mafia guy who does the dirty work and goes and punishes people. He was in jail. He did 8 years. He gets out. He's now a security guard at a club. He meets doesn't really meet, but he eventually talks and has a romantic relationship with a chef at the club he works at. She has her own thing going on. We learn about her. She wants to get rich just very quickly. It's interesting. And then from all the history we learn, it just kind of ends. It's like the new Fantastic Four movie, if you will, where if it's 2 hours long, an hour 45 of it was exposition, and then we got 10 minutes of story and 5 minutes of credits. This, I feel, and it's short. It's a short book. It's only 160, 170 pages. I feel like if it could have been a little longer, we could have lengthened it out a little bit. The ending didn't have to be so abrupt. It did end nicely. I like the way it ended. There's only so many endings to a book you can do. So I like the way this one ended. Anthony Bourdain. I still enjoy Anthony Bourdain on television. I just wish this wasn't in his voice when I read it. My rating on this would be a 5.5 out of 10 because it's just so mediocre and so to me. I feel like 5 is too harsh. I feel like 6 is too high. 5.5. If you've read this, let me know what you think. If you see this out for very cheap. Pick it up and read it. Let me know what you think. Um, but don't say I told you to read this because you may hate it. I didn't, but you may. I I try to be very positive on things. I'm at a point in my life where I'm just trying to enjoy life. I'm very happy at what life is, and I'm trying to enjoy every bit of it. If I see an awful movie, I'll enjoy it for how awful it is. If I hear an awful song, I'll try to enjoy it for how awful it is. I try to enjoy everything. So Anthony Bourdain, Bobby Gold Stories, 5.5. Thank you. See Chris out.